The last thing I saw before I died was a disciplinary hearing notice pinned to my dorm room door. I was 21 years old, a senior at Sterling University, and I had spent the past 3 years being systematically destroyed by the 3 women who were supposed to be my friends, MY Sweemates. My Ivy League sisters. Sabine Chen, Victoria Ashford, and Margot Hale, the daughters of senators, CEOs, and federal judges, had turned my life into a living nightmare, and tonight they were going to finish the job. The notice was printed on Sterling University letterhead, the ink still warm from the dean's printer. Formal disciplinary hearing. Elena Vance. Charge. Grand theft. Allegation. The accused stole a diamond bracelet valued at $47,000 from the dormitory suite of Sabine Chen. The hearing was scheduled for tomorrow at 9 a.m. The punishment for grand theft, according to the student handbook, was immediate expulsion that I would lose my scholarship to MY degree to MY future. Everything I had worked for since I was a scholarship kid from a dying factory town who had dared to dream of something better. I had not stolen the bracelet, and I had never even seen the bracelet. But Sabine had planted it in my laundry hamper 3 days ago, and Margot had discovered it during a routine room check, and Victoria had already called her father's lawyer to discuss legal options. The 3 of them had been planning this for months. I knew because I had heard them laughing about it through the paper-thin walls of our shared suite, their voices carrying through the vents like poison gas. The scholarship girl thinks she belongs here, Sabine had said. Let's show her what happens to people who don't know their place. My place, I was the daughter of a waitress and a factory worker, attending a school where the average student's family income was higher than my parents would earn in their entire lives. I had gotten into Sterling on a full academic scholarship, the first person from my high school to attend an Ivy League institution in 43 years, and my mother had wept with pride. My father had framed my acceptance letter, and I had arrived on campus believing that hard work and integrity were enough. I was wronged, A.T. Sterling. Hard work was mocked. Integrity was a liability. And people like me, the scholarship students, the financial aid cases, the diversity admits, were tolerated only as long as we remembered our place that I had forgotten. I had earned better grades than Sabine Chen. I had been chosen for the honors thesis program over Victoria Ashford. I had been praised by a professor who had never once acknowledged Margot Hale. I had committed the unpardonable sin of outperforming my betters, and now they were going to destroy me. The hearing was a formality. Sabine's father was a U.S. senator. Victoria's mother was the chairwoman of Sterling's board of trustees. Margot's uncle was the federal judge who had donated the law school library. The dean who presided over the hearing had been personally selected by Victoria's mother. The evidence was a bracelet that had been planted in my hamper by women who had never faced a consequence in their lives. I was going to be expelled, and there was nothing I could do about it. The hearing lasted 47 minutes. The dean read the charges. Sabine wept prettily about her violated trust. Victoria presented the bracelet with a flourish. Margot testified that she had seen me acting suspiciously near Sabine's room. I was not allowed to present evidence. I was not allowed to call witnesses. I was not even allowed to speak in my own defense. When the dean asked if I had anything to say, Victoria's lawyer, a silver-haired man in a suit that cost more than my parents' house, interrupted before I could open my mouth. My client's case is clear, he said. We see no need for further theatrics. I was expelled at 10:17 a.m. BY noon. My scholarship was revoked. BY 3 p.m. I had been ordered to vacate my dormitory within 24 hours. My parents drove 6 hours to pick me up, my mother weeping silently in the passenger seat, my father's hands white-knuckled on the steering wheel. Neither of them believed I had stolen the bracelet. Neither of them could do anything about it. I went home to a town that was already dying. The factory where my father worked had closed 2 years earlier. The hospital where my mother waitressed was cutting shifts. I got a job at a grocery store, then a warehouse, then a call center, and I tried to apply to other schools, but my transcript was flagged with the expulsion and no one would touch me. The narrative that Sabine, Victoria, and Margot had constructed, the scholarship girl who stole from her betters, followed me everywhere. I was unhirable, uneducatable, erased. 3 years after the expulsion, my father died of a heart attack that the doctors attributed to prolonged stress. 6 months after that, my mother was diagnosed with late-stage cancer. She had no insurance. The treatment would have cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. She died in a county hospice, her hand in mine, her last words an apology. I'm sorry we couldn't give you more. I died 2 years later, not dramatically, no suicide note, no final act of defiance, just a slow, quiet fading. A heart that stopped while I slept in the same bedroom where I had grown up, in the same town that had been dying around me, in the same world that had never wanted me to succeed. My last thought was a prayer. Please, let someone remember what they did. Let someone make them pay. And then I opened my eyes, and I was 18 years old again, standing in the middle of my freshman dorm room at Sterling University, a suitcase in my hand, and a course catalog on my desk. I was back. The system flickered at the edge of my vision, translucent and blue, that I had 3 years until the hearing point, 3 years to gather evidence. 3 years to build a case so devastating that Sabine, Victoria, and Margot would never recover from it. And I was going to use every single second. System initializing. Host detected. Elena Vance. Status. Deceased. Cause. Systemic persecution. Economic displacement. Stress-induced cardiac failure. Compatibility. 99.8%. Activating karmic rebirth protocol. Skill unlocked. Absolute documentation. Every act of cruelty, every lie, every conspiracy will be recorded with forensic precision. Audio. Video. Digital footprints. Nothing will escape. The first secret came on the second day of orientation. I was sitting in the common room, pretending to read my course catalog, when Sabine Chen's phone call drifted through the wall. She was talking to her mother, her voice carrying in that careless, privileged way that assumed no one else was listening. No, Mom, I'm not worried about the scholarship kids. They're basically invisible, that I'll just stay close to Victoria and Margot. We're already planning to take the big suite on the 5th floor, the one with the bay windows? Yeah, we'll just tell the housing office that we need it for study groups. They won't say no to a senator's daughter. The system pinged. Evidence file number 0001 created. Subject: conspiracy to manipulate university housing policies using political influence. Audio recording preserved. Metadata attached. The second secret came 3 days later. Victoria Ashford was in the library, ostensibly studying, but her laptop screen was visible from the table behind her. She was editing a scholarship application essay, not her own, Margot's. Victoria was rewriting Margot's essay to make it sound more disadvantaged, fabricating stories about childhood poverty and family hardship that Margot had never experienced. You're not diverse enough, Victoria said, laughing. But if we say your grandmother was an immigrant who worked in a sweatshop, the scholarship committee will eat it up. The system pinged again. Evidence file number 0002 created. Subject: scholarship fraud. Fabrication of minority status for financial gain. Screenshot captured. The secrets kept coming faster and faster. Every few dozen seconds, a new revelation. Sabine's father, the senator, had been funneling campaign contributions through a shell company in Delaware. I found the documents in a misaddressed email that appeared in my inbox, forwarded by a confused intern. Victoria's mother, the board chairwoman, had been trading admission slots for donations to the university's endowment. I recorded a phone call where she explicitly told a donor that his son's application would be fast-tracked in exchange for a 7-figure gift. Margot's uncle, the federal judge, had been accepting bribes to dismiss cases involving Sterling University students. I discovered the pattern buried in court records that the system helped me access. And the 3 women themselves, Sabine, Victoria, and Margot, were not just cruel, they were criminal. Sabine had been selling prescription stimulants to other students, using her father's congressional immunity to shield her from investigation. Victoria had been running a cheating ring, selling exam answers and term papers to wealthy students who didn't want to do their own work. Margot had been orchestrating a blackmail scheme, collecting compromising information on professors and administrators, and using it to ensure favorable grades. Every secret I documented. Every crime I recorded. The system's database grew and grew until I had thousands of files: audio, video, screenshots, financial records, court documents, emails, text messages. The evidence was so comprehensive, so overwhelming, that when I finally assembled it into a single dossier, it ran to nearly 900 pages. By my junior year, I had documented crimes committed by 47 people: Sabine's father, Victoria's mother, Margot's uncle, professors who had accepted bribes, administrators who had covered up sexual assault, donors who had bought their children's way into Sterling with checks and connections. The conspiracy was not just a few cruel roommates. It was an entire institution, rotten from the foundation up, and I had the proof to bring it all down. The public reckoning came on the first day of senior year. I had chosen the date carefully, the annual Sterling University convocation, when all students, faculty, and trustees gathered in the Great Hall for the opening address. The keynote speaker that year was Senator Harold Chen, Sabine's father. He was standing at the podium, delivering a speech about integrity and the American dream, when the lights flickered and the screens behind him went dark. And then my face appeared on every screen in the hall. "Good morning," I said, my voice echoing through the silent auditorium. "My name is Elena Vance. I am a senior at this university, and I have spent the past 3 years documenting crimes committed by the people who run it." The audience erupted. Senator Chen froze at the podium. Sabine, seated in the front row with Victoria and Margot, went white as a sheet. "Let's start with the senator," I continued, as the screens filled with documents. "Harold Chen has been laundering campaign contributions through a shell company in Delaware. Here are the bank records. Here are the wire transfers. Here is the testimony of the intern who accidentally forwarded the evidence to my inbox. Then let's move to the Board of Trustees. Victoria Ashford's mother, Celeste Ashford, has been trading admission slots for donations. Here are the recorded phone calls. Here are the emails. Here is the spreadsheet of every student who was admitted through the Fast Track program, along with the amounts their parents paid. And then, of course, there's Judge Malcolm Hale, Margot's uncle, who's been accepting bribes to dismiss cases involving Sterling students. Here are the court records. Here are the bank statements. Here is the testimony of the clerk who processed the bribes." The screens kept scrolling, new evidence appearing every few seconds. The audience's shock was turning to fury, and the focus of that fury was shifting toward the 3 women in the front row. Sabine stood up. "This is a lie. She's been trying to destroy us since freshman year. She's just a bitter scholarship kid who couldn't hack it." "The bracelet," I said, and she froze. "The one you planted in my laundry hamper. You haven't done it. Why, E.T., did I end this timeline? You haven't done it yet, but I know exactly when you were planning to. March 14th, 2 days before spring break. You were going to buy a bracelet, hide it in my hamper, and then discover it during a room check. You were going to have me expelled. And then you were going to laugh about it." Sabine's face went gray. "How do you know that? We never told anyone. We only talked about it in the suite. The suite where I lived. The walls were very thin, Sabine. I heard every word." The doors at the back of the Great Hall opened. A team of federal agents walked in, led by a woman in a dark suit. Senator Harold Chun, you are under arrest for wire fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy. Celeste Ashford, you are under arrest for bribery and fraud. Malcolm Hale, you are under arrest for accepting bribes and obstruction of justice. Sabine Chun, Victoria Ashford, and Margot Hale, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, distribution of controlled substances, and academic fraud. Sabine screamed. Victoria tried to run. Margot collapsed in her chair, sobbing. The federal agents moved through the crowd with practiced efficiency, handcuffing the senator, the board chairwoman, the judge, and the three women who had thought they were untouchable. I watched from the back of the hall as my tormentors were led away in chains. And when the last agent had departed, when the great hall had fallen into a stunned, electric silence, I walked down the aisle to the podium. The microphone was still on. The screens were still showing my evidence. My name is Elena Vance, I said, my voice steady. I am the daughter of a waitress and a factory worker. I came to this university on a full academic scholarship, and I was told from the moment I arrived that people like me don't belong here, that we are invisible, that we exist only to serve the ambitions of the wealthy and the powerful, but I am not invisible. I have never been invisible. And the evidence I have gathered, all of it, all 900 pages, has already been sent to the Department of Justice, the Internal Revenue Service, and the New York Times. This university will change. Not because it wants to, because it has to. I walked out of the Great Hall into the bright September sunlight. Behind me, the chaos was beginning. Journalists flooding the aisles, students shouting into their phones, the entire machinery of scandal grinding into motion. But I didn't look back. I had done what I came to do. Third-party objective commentary by Dr. Anya Sharma, investigative journalist, author of The Ivory Tower, How Elite Universities Protect Predators. The Sterling University case is unprecedented in the annals of American higher education, and Elena Vance's role in its exposure represents a paradigm shift in how we understand institutional whistleblowing. What makes her documentation so devastating is not merely its volume, though nearly 900 pages of evidence is extraordinary by any standard, but its specificity, dates, times, names. Verbatim quotations, metadata. The dossier reads less like a student's complaint and more like a federal indictment, because that is precisely what it became. The psychological sophistication of her approach deserves particular attention. Rather than confronting her tormentors directly, which would have triggered the university's well-documented machinery of retaliation, she allowed them to incriminate themselves while believing they operated in complete safety. The thin walls of the shared suite, which Sabine, Victoria, and Margot viewed as a mere architectural inconvenience, became a conduit for their self-destruction. Every boast, every scheme, every careless admission of guilt was preserved and catalogued. The convocation timing reveals an almost theatrical understanding of narrative structure. By choosing the moment of maximum institutional self-congratulation, the opening address, with all stakeholders present, Elena ensured that the exposure would achieve maximum velocity. There would be no quiet cover-up, no discreet settlement, no private resignation. The entire Sterling community witnessed the unmasking simultaneously, and the presence of federal agents transformed the scene from a student protest into a law enforcement operation. The most chilling detail, however, is the bracelet testimony. Elena confronted Sabine with a crime that, in the current timeline, had not yet been committed. Sabine's response, "We never told anyone. We only talked about it in the suite," is effectively a confession to a conspiracy that existed only in planning stages. This is not merely evidence gathering. It is a form of psychological warfare that exploits the perpetrator's own arrogance against them. They could not deny the plot because they had already discussed it so openly, so confidently, that they assumed no one important was listening. The trials lasted 2 years. Senator Harold Chun was convicted on 17 counts of wire fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy. He was sentenced to 14 years in federal prison. Celeste Ashford was convicted on 11 counts of bribery and fraud. She was sentenced to 8 years. Judge Malcolm Hale was convicted on 23 counts of accepting bribes and obstruction of justice. He was sentenced to 18 years. Sabine Chun, Victoria Ashford, and Margot Hale were each convicted on multiple counts. Sabine received 10 years for drug distribution and conspiracy. Victoria received 7 years for running the cheating ring and academic fraud. Margot received 6 years for blackmail and obstruction. All three were expelled from Sterling University. Their degrees were revoked. Their family names, once synonymous with power and privilege, became synonymous with corruption. Sterling University itself was placed under federal monitorship. The Board of Trustees was purged and reconstituted. The admission system was overhauled. New protections for scholarship students were implemented. And at the center of it all, the Vance Scholarship was established, a full-ride award for first-generation college students from economically disadvantaged backgrounds, funded by the seized assets of the criminal enterprises I had exposed. I testified at every trial. I sat in the witness box and looked my tormentors in the eye, and I told the truth about what they had done. Sabine wept. Victoria screamed. Margot begged for forgiveness that would never come. And when the final verdict was read, when the last gavel fell, I walked out of the courthouse into the same bright sunlight I had seen on the day of the convocation. My Aunt Margaret, my mother's sister, the only family who had believed me, was waiting on the steps. "Your parents would be proud of you," she said. "Your mother especially. She always knew you were going to change the world." "I didn't change the world," I said. "I just refused to let it stay the same." I never returned to Sterling University, not for a reunion, not for an honorary degree, not for the dedication of the Vance Scholarship Building. I didn't need their validation. I had already won. But I did visit my parents' graves, in a small cemetery on the edge of the town where I grew up. I told them what I had done. I told them that their daughter had not been erased, that their sacrifice had not been in vain, that their names, Vance, were now associated not with shame, but with justice. The scholarship girl who was supposed to disappear became the woman who brought down an empire, and the institution that tried to bury her now bears her name. I am Elena Vance. I am the daughter of a waitress and a factory worker, and I am just getting started.